me tell you about a friend. It's Craig LeBlanc where the good times never end. Talking Parks and Rec, it's a show you gotta know. Welcome one and all to the Daily Parks and Rec Show. It's the Daily Parks and Rec Show.
Finding that every day I was spending all my time down in the park for long lunch breaks and after work and coming down before work, and just getting down to the river was a great way for me to de-stress and sort of work on my mental health in what was a pretty high stress job. The job opening up gave me the chance to sort of apply my daily passion for the James River Park system to my employment, and it was a really nice fit. And I've been now 4 years, I believe, in the job, and it's been great.
Welcome to the Daily Parks and Rec Show Leadership Series. Today we're taking you to Richmond, Virginia to explore the unique community of the James River Park system. We'll be speaking with Josh Stutz, Executive Director for Friends of the James River Park, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting, expanding, and enhancing this incredible urban wilderness. And joining him is Giles Garrison, Programs and Operations Manager for the City of Richmond's Department of Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities, who oversees the development and maintenance of Richmond's diverse park divisions. Discover how this 600-acre urban wilderness, boasting 2 to 3 million visitors annually, thrives through a dynamic partnership between the City of Richmond and the Friends of the James River Park. Learn about their innovative approaches to park management, community engagement, and fundraising that allow this unique system to flourish, even with its historical roots as city utility infrastructure. Stay tuned as we delve into the collaborative spirit that keeps the James River Park system a vital green heart in the city. All right, we are live again with the Daily Parks and Rec Show Leadership Edition, Monday through Thursday, 12 noon Eastern. I have special guests from Richmond, Virginia area, Josh Stutz and Giles. You just told me. How is this possible?
Okay. Don't worry. Giles Garrison.
Garrison.
And Josh Stutz.
And Josh Stutz. I just totally did a faceplant on that one. But yeah, thank you so much for attending the show. Let's see. We have so much I want to discuss with you guys that I talked with Josh, but maybe we can just start by introducing yourself and kind of say what y'all do in Parks and Recreation.
Sure. Go ahead, Giles. Why don't you go first?
Happy to. Okay. Well, thanks for having me, Craig. I'm with the City of Richmond, Virginia, Department of Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities. My job is a Programs and Operations Manager, which means that I assist with the development and the maintenance of the parks in the City of Richmond, across all of our several divisions of parks.
Fantastic. And what's the population of Richmond?
220,000 or so and growing. And it might sound small. We are an independent city. The Richmond metro area has 1.5 million or so. But in Virginia, cities are independent. So that's our population.
Yeah, that's a nice size city. Josh?
Yeah, so I'm Josh Stutz. I'm the Executive Director for Friends of the James River Parks. And part of the reason we asked Giles to join us today, her previous job was as the superintendent of the James River Park system, which is a fantastic City of Richmond park that straddles the falls of the James River here in Richmond, which you and I talked about, and I'd love to get into with your audience here. But we are a nonprofit support group that helps manage or helps provide additional resources for the management of the James River Park system. So we work alongside the James River Park system staff to identify and solve problems. And we say all of our work falls into either protecting, expanding, or enhancing the James River Park. And so we're a nonprofit. So I would say my career in Parks and Rec is limited to just my time with Friends of James River Park. I'm a nonprofit professional. So my background is in sort of a wider range of fundraising, development, nonprofit management, sort of growing organization type work.
So, there's so many ways to slice up a park. And I think yours is a unique type where a nonprofit has this, unique piece of property that's kind of its own thing. So maybe you can maybe go into the details of how that came about, how it works, and how it kind of incorporates with your local park system.
Sure. So the whole park's actually managed by the city. So the park itself is owned and operated by the City of Richmond, just to be clear. Right. And we are kind of a partner in helping find additional resources. The history of Friends of James River Park. The James River Park system is around 50 years old. Started in different pieces and parts around the city of Richmond, all focused right around the James River in our downtown area. It's mostly what we would call urban wilderness. And it stretches at around 600 acres from one end of the park to the other, kind of through the whole city. It's a lot of former industrial sites, a lot of wilderness that takes you right up to the edge of the river, which is really great. Giles, do you have any other notes about the history of the park, things that you think are important to include?
Sure. I think the history of Richmond's James River Park is fascinating. Historically, it was a part of the city's utilities and water treatment and sewer infrastructure. And since the 1950s, slowly but surely, the city came to realize what a gem it was. And rather than seeing it as just sort of a place where, sewer water dumps out. So our park kind of benefits, and also it's a challenge from the fact that this is the history of the park. It benefits because it was never developed. And for anybody who's never visited Richmond, it's absolutely astounding to have this 600-acre undeveloped wilderness in the middle of the city where people can really escape and dip their feet into the rapids and take a kayak or a boat ride, or some people tube through some really incredible wilderness and rapids. So we avoided development just as a result of it being a part of the city's utility infrastructure. And then later, an easement was created. We just hit the 20-year anniversary of an easement, which protects the park at this point from future development. So I don't know. I would just welcome folks to come visit Richmond and explore, because it really is a cool intersection of industry and nature and sites that are coming online all the time. It's a fantastic place to explore.
Now, just to help define some of the terms for college kids and a lot of people new to the industry, can you define what is an easement and what benefit did that bring to y'all?
Absolutely. An easement is a legal protection. It's a property. It's a way of protecting property from development. And typically an easement is put into place by a nonprofit or a government. In our case, the state government shares this protection on the property, this easement, with Capital Region Land Conservancy, another local nonprofit. Other examples of easement are utility easements. So we do have, our local utility has power lines going over some parts of the river. So that's a different kind of easement. So basically, it's a way of protecting a part of a property and preserving a certain kind of use. So in our case, it's a nature easement, or a natural wilderness area easement that we have. And it protects the park in perpetuity, basically forever.
Fantastic. So do the utilities that are on that property, do they contribute in any way? Or how do they contribute? Are they somewhat of a partner as well?
I'll let Josh speak to the partnerships with Dominion that we have.
Yeah, so we have some really great partners with the sort of park neighbors, and probably our biggest utility in Richmond would be Dominion Energy. They're a power company, and they've got power across 4 or 5 states, I believe, headquartered literally in the space immediately adjacent to the park. And they're tremendous park users and great neighbors to the park. I think there's some, so we've had some great, there's a good example of some space down in the river there with an old abandoned power plant on Belle Isle too, that like kind of talks about the industrial use of the space. So it's kind of been different things at different times. I think the other important piece of utility infrastructure outside of Dominion is Richmond's Department of Public Utilities, which has significant combined sewer overflows and significant water infrastructure all right along the river, because as a river focused city, that was the water infrastructure for the first 200 years of building Richmond. And that's something that's being sort of untangled and repaired right now in a lot of different ways. So just within a stone's throw of sections of the park, you'll find the water treatment plant for intakes and outtakes for people's drinking water. All those facilities are right within the boundaries, within close boundaries of the park.
Now, do they contribute financially to any of the work that y'all are doing?
One of our Dominion Energy, the power company I mentioned, is probably one of our strongest financial and volunteer contributors. And then because the water company, or the DPU, is the city, we have in the past gotten grants from Department of Public Utilities, but they aren't, they're a partner in other ways to help us maintain clean water.
I can speak to that one too. DPU, or Department of Public Utilities, and I don't know how it might work in other localities, but at least in Richmond, with some of our combined sewer overflow projects, where we're working towards improving our CSO, and I know a lot of localities are, but where those projects happen, for example, right over on South Side, the utilities are going to improve trails and bridges where they're doing some activity that's going to be a little bit disruptive to park users. We'll still be able to get people through the trails that exist over on the south side of the river, on what we call the Reedy Creek bypass area, or basically the park access road. Anyway, so due to the construction, the public utilities are going to leave it better than they found it. They're going to replace a bridge. They're going to improve a couple of places where we've had trails wash out in the past. So in that way, they're certainly contributing. And that would be the city of Richmond. So those are colleagues, but they're mindful that they want to improve the park where they create a little bit of interruption.
Anything else to add to that, Josh?
Yeah, we're just super excited. We've mentioned the CSO project a few times. It's something that's hugely impactful to the park and to the river, and we're so excited to see so much progress being made. I think it's really easy to sit and see a problem like combined sewer systems that go back 2 centuries almost in Richmond, and people around town get upset anytime there's an overflow issue or high water, things like that. But I'm excited to see that all finally happening, being untangled, and the progress that's been made is phenomenal. And I think the folks at DPU do a really nice job.
And what does that stand for? CSO? You mentioned CSO project?
Combined sewage overflow.
Yep.
Okay.
So in our city, it means the stormwater and the sewage kind of use the same system to get to the the wastewater treatment plant, the same set of pipes. And so when it's historically just been designed to overflow to the river, when groundwater, when rainwater hits stormwater hits a certain level, it pushes the mix into the river, and we're fixing that. So that's what's being undone. But all that infrastructure kind of is mixed throughout the park.
Fantastic. All right. So I'm curious. Let's explain to the audience how, y'all's personal journey into where you are now. What did you do in college? What did you kind of pursue yourself? And then how did you end up where you are now?
Josh, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I was born and raised in rural Ohio, so way out in the middle of nowhere in cornfield country in Northwest Ohio. Went to school in Columbus for political science. So my undergrad was in political science, sort of not really knowing what I wanted to do with it. Got a job working in museums, worked in the museum field for about 10 years right after college. And through that, had to start finding my own funding for education programming I was running. And that kind of got me into this nonprofit side of the business, and ended up going to graduate school in Los Angeles for nonprofit management. And that sort of, we moved to Richmond just right after I completed that program. My wife's family's from Richmond, and that brought us back across the country. And we bounced around a couple of different jobs in Richmond, because nonprofit work is, you find something for a little while, and funding changes or things shift around, and you got to move around a bit. I was in a really stressful job in my last job before this, where we were raising funds for a local homeless shelter. Great organization, hard work to do. That was during the pandemic and everything else. And thankfully, Friends of James River Park was hiring their first executive director at about the time where I was reaching my burnout point at that job. And I was finding that every day I was spending all my time down in the park on lunch breaks and after work, and coming down before work, and just getting down to the river was a great way for me to de-stress and sort of work on my mental health in what was a pretty high stress job. And this job opening up gave me the chance to sort of apply my daily passion for the James River Park system to my employment, and it was a really nice fit. And I've been now 4 years, I believe, in the job, and it's been great.
Yeah, I can't wait to go into all this fundraising expertise you have later in the show. But Giles, so how about yourself?
I was born and raised in Richmond. I kind of grew up playing in the river and going, tubing, and climbing around on what I now understand are low head dams, which you really shouldn't do. But it was my playground, and I took for granted what an incredible amenity it was. Spent a lot of time wandering around on the trails and things. I was also interested in political science, like Josh. I went to high school in Richmond, went away to college, studied American studies personally, and I think like a lot of people, maybe I was trying to get my head around this American kind of conundrum. Who are we and what are we trying to do here? And I found myself looking at cities and cities as places that do or don't successfully take care of their populations. So I got a master's degree in urban planning. And I was really interested in landscape urbanism and the idea that cities evolve in landscapes and should be sort of native to their landscape in some way, and that we can design cities better so that they are more sustainable, for lack of a better word, and treat natural resources well. And I also went into nonprofits after school. I was really interested in community design and things like that. And then worked with a group called Groundwork RVA, which is a national group that works a lot with the National Park Service. Groundwork is a nonprofit that does urban conservation with kids and adults to kind of reclaim public spaces as places for community. So anyway, that led me to working with the Parks Department. So I started with the City of Richmond 6 years ago. I had partnered with the City of Richmond through Groundwork. I was thrilled to join the public sector so that I didn't have that burden of fundraising, which is so difficult for me particularly, and which I really appreciate about working with Friends of the James. So I can just kind of throw myself at how do we as a local government support flourishing public spaces, because they're so important to a flourishing population. So anyway, I'm coming up on my 6-year anniversary with the city, and really just love this work.
I love how y'all both have that I guess from an early age, that interest in serving communities and seeing how they, keep the land that their community is in, just keeping it beautiful and how it serves the communities. Maybe let's talk about a little more how, what does it mean to serve the community from y'all's standpoint?
Josh?
Yeah. So I think our roles in this are a little different too, because Giles is as a public servant in the city of Richmond is but by definition, she's a public servant. I work in nonprofits, and our mission is to serve the public, but it's not exactly the same thing, right? So I think my work in nonprofits has a lot to do with my own desires to do work that I find to be really important. I think there's something to trying to live a life that if other people lived the way that you live, the world would be a net positive. Not every day, and I'm not trying to solve every problem, but minimally, if more people sort of had that mindset of, let's try to leave spaces better than we found them, then I think the world would be a better place. And so that's physical spaces or problems you're trying to solve, whatever it is. So I think working in public spaces like we do now, or like I do now, I see it every day. I can go down to a place, I can make it better than it was before I got there. And that's sort of a philosophy that I think fits people who work in nonprofits really well. The idea that no matter what organizations you're cycling through, you're having the ability to make an impact in these sort of smaller nonprofits that are focused on the mission and do good work. And so I've always been fortunate enough to have a series of organizations I've worked for that I've been able to, I think, leave better than I found them. And I think that's certainly the case with Friends of the James River Park, which as the first full-time employee, we've been able to sort of take it from a very grassroots, not disorganized, differently organized type of venture into something that's producing close to $1 million a year in revenue that we're able to put back into the James River Parks.
So Giles, when you think of serving your community, what does that mean to you?
Oh man, it means so many things to me. I think of it in a few different ways. One is sort of addressing historical mistakes that we have made in Richmond, and I take those I take some level of responsibility as a Richmonder for the fact that we were a city that was redlined, which means from a standpoint of real estate, we had a system where if you're African American, you couldn't buy a home in certain neighborhoods. So what it meant was we ended up with a segregated city where some folks didn't have access to park spaces. Historically, not that long ago, within living memory of my folks. So how do we address decisions that were made in the past that discouraged like half of our city from reaching a park? So we're talking now as a division, but also as a parks division, but also as James River Park System about how do you increase access? How do you improve your signage so it's more welcoming? How do you create welcoming and accessible spaces so that whoever you are, you feel welcome and you know how to get to the park? I think I'm probably preaching to the choir when I say that parks and access and exposure to nature is healing, and it helps you grow and develop. It helps people create relationships and build memories. It is a part of our lives as humans, and we want, especially as the Parks Department, to create those opportunities in the city and for everyone to have access to those. Our city population is changing. We have a higher number of folks who speak Spanish in the city. So with Josh's help, we've been able to provide English and Spanish language signage at all of the park locations, especially relating to river safety and what to look out for in the rapids. So serving the community is a combination of all sorts of strategies and ways of improving access, improving communication, being a resource to people, and also listening to folks and finding out, what is it that this community in particular feels when they're in a space or needs when they're in a space. I'm really excited this year. We have our second River Safety Day in Spanish. And we did our first River Safety Day last year in full Spanish speaking. So we had staff working with our Office of Immigrant and Refugee Services, a refugee engagement department in the city. And we trained up firefighters and basically had an entire River Safety Day that was all about how do you understand how to be safe in the rapids with the Spanish speaking population. But there's more to it than just safety and signage and language. It's also, are we planning playgrounds within walking distance to our areas where you have a lot of residents who have little kids, or again, who may live in a historically redlined neighborhood where there hasn't been a thought about playgrounds. So that my department has done this walk study. So how many playgrounds or how many parks do we have that's within a 10-minute walk of places in Richmond? So we now know like where we need to put resources so that we're closing that walk shed so that everyone in the city should be able to reach a park within 10 minutes. So anyway, there are a lot of ways to think about serving the community, but those are just some of the ways that we are trying to do that now. I think one other thing that we do with Friends of the James River Park is volunteer engagement. And I know that is a way for people to serve the park, but I think it's very mutually beneficial. I think there's something very reviving about just going out, working in the park, putting your cell phone in a bag and just like sort of being present with other people in the community. And it really refreshes your sense of just being alive and neighbors with somebody else and caring for the planet around you. And I think that's good medicine for folks.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with that. I spend so much time walking through these parks. They kind of breathe energy and life back into you. Okay, so can y'all define what a nonprofit is, and specifically, what makes a good relationship between like a Parks and Rec department and the nonprofit that y'all have?
Ooh, all right. So I think that's great. This is why I wanted Giles on too, because she has a background on nonprofits, and we worked so hard for so long on what Friends of James River Park is today. So a nonprofit organization is any organization out there with a civic focused mission whose purpose is to fulfill that mission and not derive profit from doing so. So it's a business with a different type of structure that allows for excess revenue to be driven back into its mission. And so that's what Friends of the James River Park is. It started a long time ago under a man named Ralph White, who was the original park superintendent and sort of laid the foundation for what the James River Parks is today. He's sort of a legendary Richmonder. I saw him the other day. It's like seeing Bigfoot. He's sort of a James River Park cryptid. When you see Ralph White, everyone gets really excited. He was pulling weeds on the side of a highway, which was an interesting choice. But I saw Ralph in the woods the other day. But he started Friends of the James River Park as a way to sort of get more involvement, and sort of he saw the need for cities having a lot of different priorities, and it's tough to pull funding, to make a case for funding for something like the James River Park system, which is so unique. I think that's the other thing we want to highlight here is not every city has something like the James River Park system, where it is a regional draw. It gets somewhere between 2 and 3 million visits a year, and about a third of those come from outside of the city entirely. So about a third are city residents, a third come from Greater Richmond, and a third altogether are tourists. And so if you look at those numbers, it would, if it were a national park, it'd be somewhere between 10 and 15th most visited, and it's this little City of Richmond park that on paper, officially, its only funding comes through City of Richmond taxpayers, which is roughly $3 per household that makes it into the park. And so there's this huge user base that's not being captured as part of that. And part of the reason Friends of the James River Park exists is to help draw in those additional resources from individually passionate people who love the park, folks who live in the counties but use the parks and maybe want to kick in a little extra, corporations that exist within the boundaries of the park that want to step up and show the community they care about the things that they care about, and foundations and other philanthropic types around Richmond, where we're trying to pull this community together to look at something like the James River Park system, which has such a massive user base here in Richmond and regionally, and make the case that it shouldn't just be the city that has to pay for this. It's being used by a wider audience. And cities have to pay for roads and schools and fire, social services. And I would personally, and I think what Richmond's doing well, what Giles mentioned, is looking at areas that have not received historic investments in parks. And so the fact they're trying to fix some of that now, and I don't want to see a greater increase of funding for the James River Park system come at the expense of community centers or parks in parts of the city that haven't gotten that investment before. And so part of why I do this work and why I think it's so important is that it's a chance to add additional resources without disrupting, without increasing taxes, which is its own hassle, but also without disrupting the sort of delicate nature of what Richmond is, and the fact that it's sort of playing catch up in some areas of the city where that did not receive investment through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and we're trying to catch that up now. James River Parks, I think it, in many ways, could take care of itself eventually. We're working on building that out, but I think there's a strong enough user base here that, I mean, if every time you visited the park, you paid $1, we'd have twice as much money as we have together between what the city's putting in, or roughly what the city's putting in and what we're putting in, and that's $1 a person. Now, not everybody's going to do that, and we're not asking them to, but it's just a way to think about the numbers of what's going into the James River Park system. And certainly we're not working in any way to sort of push the city out of our work. We're grateful for what they do, and we're happy to be able to support it. We're just trying to get additional resources to the table without disrupting projects in other parts of the community.
Yeah,
that is my answer to the question.
Yeah, that's why I love this show. It's like you think you know what, and I've even started a nonprofit. I had a 501c3 that helped entrepreneurs connect with mentors that were also entrepreneurs. You think you know what the word nonprofit means, and then I ask y'all to define it, and I'm like, man, I was such a pre-K version of nonprofit. So what is nonprofit? Same question to you, Giles. What does nonprofit mean to you, and specifically how does that partnership work?
Well, a nonprofit specifically for me is part of the private sector, and that means that it doesn't operate with the same amount of bureaucratic red tape. Although we do, when we proceed with work with Friends of the James, we make sure that we do, we on the city side go through the appropriate pathways and things. Josh is able to host events and raise awareness and raise enthusiasm and raise volunteer resources, raise funding there's a benefit concert coming up this summer that Josh is able to do that's going to help the park out a lot. So when I think of nonprofit coming after, I was involved very closely in 2 nonprofits in my career. It allows a lot of creativity, and it allows for experimenting with different ways of raising awareness and support for a particular cause. I think this partnership with the Friends of the James has been incredibly fruitful since I've been working with Josh, which I started in 2022 as the superintendent at James River Park System. I'm now a programs and operations manager for the Parks Division, but I get to keep working with Josh to look at some capital projects and improvements, as well as our Park Ranger program, which has come into play over the last couple of years. So when I think about the things that Josh and I are working on, it's natural resource management planning. That is so exciting for us to be able to work with Friends of the James to develop a natural resource management plan that helps us plan out how are we going to address like these huge issues of whether it's invasive spread or the impact of those 2 or 3 million visitors. We have to manage that, and it's a task. So we probably wouldn't have been able to go after this funding to do a natural resource management plan without Josh's support. And so we're at the cusp of finishing that. And it's a huge contribution to how we think about park management in the James River Park System, as well as the city. So it's like an entirely new set of tools that the nonprofit sector, specifically Friends of the James, gives us access to. So that's a public-private partnership on a good day. And I think that's what we have here.
Yeah, I love to hear about it. And I've already spun off like 4 questions. I can see I'm never going to get to the end of these. But let me do a little quick commercial break for one of our shows. It's our fastest growing show. It's the Facilities Maintenance Show that runs Monday through Thursday, where all the masters and craftsmen that maintain these facilities, from urban forestry to landscape architects to turf management. And so that's a 4-day-a-week show. And then I'll play this little commercial we made for that show, and then we'll come right back and finish up here. Welcome to the Daily Parks and Rec Show, where we highlight the essential work that keeps our parks and facilities thriving. From local ball fields to multi-use athletic complexes, field maintenance ensures every space is safe, ready, and welcoming for play and community events. Facility maintenance is the backbone of operational excellence, ensuring that recreation centers, playgrounds, and shared spaces are functional, clean, and built to last. Behind the scenes, equipment maintenance keeps vital tools and machinery in peak condition. At the core of future forward thinking is sustainability management, integrating green practices that reduce environmental impact and enhance long-term resource stewardship. Facilities maintenance is more than routine upkeep. It's strategic, essential, and foundational to building healthy and resilient communities. This is the Daily Parks and Rec Show, honoring the professionals who keep our spaces running and our communities strong. Yeah, so while we just finished that one, is there anything I'd like to say about the people that help maintain y'all's facilities?
So much. We've got great people. Oh my gosh. That's really the thing and one thing I wanted to mention, just sort of about how the relationship works too, is Friends of James River Parks for a really long time, I think, thought of itself as being really focused on what park users are trying to experience, or on the park user experience, because it was founded by park users, and that was an important part of what the organization did. I think one of the most important changes we've actually made, change in philosophy that we've made, is actually a focus on considering our primary customer to be the park staff and the people who are out there every day. And so by working to solve their problems, we can make the James River Park System a better place. And that investment goes a lot further than trying to decipher what 2.5 million park visitors want to see. If we can work with the Parks and Rec professionals who are in the park every day, I think we get a lot more mileage out of our dollars that way. So I know, Giles, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in front. You love the staff also. I get so excited. One of the coolest things we get to do every month is we provide breakfast for the park staff, and it's a chance for our board to connect with them and for us to see them directly and build a little morale. And it's one of my favorite days. I never miss Bagel Day. It's a really good time.
Love it. Giles, you have anything to say about the Parks and Rec maintenance professionals?
I just appreciate them. I think some of the work that the team at James River, but also the Parks Division does, I mean, it's just kind of epic in nature. I mean, these are small, maybe they feel like small things that are done, but people who care for park spaces are the people who, I don't know, they build the city, they build, parks around the country, obviously, and they do it out of a true love for the community and a sense of pride. And they don't get thanked enough. Every now and then, I think, Josh, we love having breakfast with you as well. And I think that, really has helped with morale. So for any friends groups who might be listening in other places, it's a really nice thing to be able to have a bagel, even, once a month and just kind of hang out for a second. Anyway, they have great skills. Generally, they're unsung heroes. They're the most wonderful people that I get to work with. And I think a lot of it is really gnarly work. Yeah. They do a great job, invasive species and fixing broken pipes and signs and trails and sometimes working in the heat and in the rain. It's not for the faint of heart. So I think a lot of them.
Yeah. We have and now we have a show dedicated to them to highlight what they do, thank them for what they do, and then just share a lot of the wisdom that sits inside of that part of this industry. Okay, so I really would like, I think a big value that y'all can help provide to the whole Parks and Rec community nationwide is a lot of this fundraising from the nonprofit side, because there's so much, so many parks are just strapped to that tax revenue, and that's a big bulk of it. But as both of you have found out, there's other ways to get funding for what you're doing through nonprofit partnerships and stuff. So maybe let's just start there. How about this one? We'll just start with wind fundraising. What's that sales pitch when you have someone that is a good fit? How do you present that? What's that conversation look like?
Yeah, I think for the most part, identifying good donors for the parks pretty simple. And I take maybe a less aggressive approach to fundraising than a lot of fundraisers do, where if I just love talking about the park, so that's what we're doing most of the time. It's not necessarily a strict fundraising pitch for a specific amount of money all the time, but if you can get engaged with me in a conversation about the park, it doesn't take long for you to understand why it's worth even a little bit of resources from your hands back to us. And I think we've done a really good job of spending our money efficiently and effectively over the years, and we can show that. We can point to projects that are done. We can point to, we have a very low overhead organization, and we can explain to people that, 84 cents of every dollar that you put in is going to come right back out into the park in some capacity, or 100%. It depends on how restricted it is and what if it's for a project or if it's for general operating or whatever. So I think for me, the fundraising pitch, it's a lot of what I already said. I think a lot of people understand the position we're in Richmond, where the James River Park system got developed the way that it developed and become this really great thing. But there are lots of communities in the other areas, the sort of reaches of the city, that didn't get to develop something like the James River Park. Of course, they don't have the river running through them. They didn't have that kind of space. But, people understand why this thing needs a little extra care and attention today. And I think people are sympathetic to local governments more than people realize. Local governments more than maybe the federal or the state or whatever. They're sympathetic to the concept that there's a lot that local governments are trying to get done. And, a little bit of money to a private organization that can do things take a slightly different approach because we're smaller and more nimble, gives people the warm and fuzzies about how their money is used. So at least I found that to be an effective case with our corporate partners. They understand sometimes the pitch to a corporate partner is more along, look how efficient we can be compared to the government, not as a way to sort of dog out the government and make fun of them or whatever, but it is like, here's an example of we were able to take and apply resources to a project in 30 days that might have taken a city department 6 months to a year to develop a project on or whatever. And sometimes that's a strong case, sometimes it isn't, and we kind of feel that out. We worked on developing a lot of relationships. We're fortunate that the park runs right through the economic corridor of Richmond, right downtown, and I can stand on the banks of Belle Isle, one of our biggest sections of the park, and look up at all the buildings with names on them and kind of work through my tick list of who we want to engage with. For the most part, with corporations, we get them involved, at least initially, through volunteerism. I was out this morning with a big group from CarMax digging some holes to do some work in the park. And that's a great way to, what I found is engaging employees of these companies, these large companies that have giving programs, that have employee retention programs that are focused around, how do they tell their employees that they share the same values as them? Well, it's by sending them out to do volunteer work, paying them the hours to do the volunteer work as part of their workday. And we've got great companies here locally that do that give their people, 10 hours a month or something to go volunteer. And that's a great way to engage. But then those companies often follow up with gifts to those nonprofits that get those high marks for employee volunteerism. So I think that's one angle of it.
Yeah, and when thinking back to my nonprofit days when I would fundraise, I never forget this. One of my biggest benefactors, he said, "Craig, let me give you a little advice. Ask for advice and you get funding. You ask for funding and you get advice."
I think that's a smart. Yeah, that's good.
Giles, you have anything to add to that?
No.
Okay, so what are the fundraising, just to stay on this topic a little bit longer, what are some of the challenges, some of the things that maybe you hate doing when it comes to fundraising? And then what are the opportunities that you have as a nonprofit seeking funding?
Well, I never meant to hating any of it. It's all so much fun, building relationships and sitting at tables and engaging with people that way. I think there are things that are efficient and things that aren't. And so we've got a huge spectrum of donors from, $10 or $20 a month and up to $50,000 and $60,000 a year. We've got this sort of range of people and individuals, foundations, corporations that we're working with. And so they all need a slightly different tactic. And sometimes I think one of the struggles is the $100 donor can sometimes take as much work as the $10,000 donor. And that's where, or more works, or if it feels, you really got to engage with somebody. And so that's just part of the job. That's something that you get used to working in fundraising. It's not always a clearly efficient process. You can't necessarily say this number of hours is going to yield this result. You kind of feel it out as you go and sort of work really hard to maintain relationships, because it's a lot easier to get another gift than it is to get a first gift. And so focusing on maintaining good relationships so you can come back to people every year is probably one of the most effective things you can be doing. And you do that by showing them that you spent the money well. So I would say our most effective tool for fundraising is the annual report we put out every September that highlights all the money we spent last fiscal year. And we do, I think, a really nice job with that report and sort of showing people exactly where their dollars went. And, for me, if they look at that report and don't like what it says and don't feel like it was a good use of their funding, then that's that tells them not to invest in us. It doesn't necessarily tell me that we're doing the wrong thing, but it's about this is what we're doing with your money. And if you like that, great, help us do more of it. Or this is your chance to get off the bus if you don't like what you see in the annual report.
Love it. Okay, so let's just imagine you've got thousands of Parks and Rec directors listening to this, which actually we do. What advice would you give a Park and Rec department in finding and working with nonprofits? Like, let's say they have one nonprofit, or they hear a lot about it, say they're hearing this, kind of what are some first steps that you can help them to maybe find and engage some of these nonprofit relationships that might be sitting in their own backyard?
I think a lot of cities are going to have something similar to what Friends of the James River Park is for some parks, and at least that's my vibe. There are great examples. We're sort of a baby version of it still. I'll point out to like Central Park Conservancy, the City Park Alliance, I think in New Orleans. There's some great examples of full scale conservancies and public private partnerships. We are kind of a mini version of it. So there's a lot of this work already happening out there, and it's really great, and we love to see it. I would say for cities that aren't there yet, I would just be wary that, and I would just say to nonprofits that are looking to do this work as well to support their local parks, it's got to be about what the park professionals are looking for, and not, park users are great, but they don't necessarily see the whole picture and how to manage a park. And I think that's probably one of the most important distinctions we have is we're not here to create opposition or throw up roadblocks to how the city manages the James River Parks. We're here to help. We're genuinely here to help. And I think getting on that level of understanding, I think it's super easy to be the type of friends group or the type of park support group that is led by passionate park users that will fight tooth and nail to get exactly what they want. And it takes a sort of passionate dispassion to sort of look at the bigger picture and slow down and not try to get your personal stuff involved. That's one of the biggest things we do. When we are recruiting new board members, the first conversation is always about the type of work we don't do. And that if you're if you're a mountain biker and you want to see better mountain bike trails in the James River Park, we've got great mountain bike trails. But we're not going to do that. That's not our business necessarily. The park as a whole and mountain biking as a component of it. But and I think kayaking is another example. If you're only here at our table to talk about better kayak ramps, well, then you're not really helping us take care of the bigger picture. And so that's where we've driven those lines. And I think that's something for groups to be mindful of as you engage with nonprofits. Just be mindful and be encouraging and be willing to get to a place where we're looking at the whole picture.
Josh, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. I think that to Josh's point, a lot of it is relationships and listening and trying to figure out what brings somebody to the table. If your nonprofit partner is already at the table, and where there are conflicting visions, there's usually a middle path, and it just takes good listening and good development of relationships. I think most directors out there are going to know that for sure. But I guess from a practical standpoint, we have in Richmond, we're really lucky to have a lot of nonprofits and folks who are actually trying to create nonprofits, even in this challenging environment, to take care of particular parks that might be in their front yard. And I think what I have observed is that having a master plan is extremely helpful. Josh and the Friends of the James helped the city develop a James River Park System master plan. A lot of it is really useful. Some components of it are not as useful, but it gives us marching orders, basically. And so we use the plan to determine what projects we want to work on. Sometimes I think they can be very, I'm thinking of other parks in the city right now that have not yet had a master plan developed, but for the friends groups who are working to partner with the city, it is just extremely helpful to have a plan for a site and components that different nonprofits can help support. And I think those are just really helpful documents to develop. So I don't know, with whatever capacity different locations have, developing a plan so that it becomes a procedure for moving forward is very helpful with strategy.
Now, Josh, I heard you mention a conservancy. Can you kind of define what that is, how that differs from a nonprofit, and how y'all see that work in the industry?
Yeah, I would say the term conservancy, when we use it, refers to a type of nonprofit that manages the park basically on behalf of a locality. That's not necessarily our long-term goal. It's a type of management network that you see in some areas. We've got a great example of one here in Richmond with the Maymont Foundation, which is a city park managed by the Maymont Foundation. It's a little different than what we have in the James River Parks, but that's just what I mean by that conservancy. It's a situation where some localities where a particular park has taken on a significant cultural importance, or I think Central Park's the example everyone gives because it's kind of the most significant one, but that's actually managed by the Central Park Conservancy, to my understanding, and has been for quite some time. That the city of New York doesn't actually directly get involved with the day-to-day operations there. It's done by this other group, and that's done with sort of the sort of anchor flagship parks in a lot of major cities. Once they reach a certain point that the upkeep on them is more than the tax base can maintain, or the draw is more regional, similar to how the James River Parks is. There, some localities make the decision to transition into that type of management.
Now, is there anything that either of you attend? And you know how we have like NRPA, and then we have like the state associations. Is there anything like that for nonprofits like y'all offer, or do y'all just attend those associations?
There is a nonprofit parks association, like there is a trade group for nonprofit associations that support parks like ours. I can't quite remember the name of it off the top of my head.
I was about to ask you, what's the name of it? We'll have to Google it.
Yeah, we're so local. We that's one of I've been recently thinking about trying to get to some conferences and doing some travel, and we're submitting for Greater Greener and some other things for some of our bigger projects. So I just haven't. We've been so focused on what's happening here in Richmond. It's hard to see, and what's happening in Richmond is so unique. It's hard to see what's going on in other places.
Right. What is that Greater Greener? I haven't heard of that before.
City Parks Alliance hosts that. If you're familiar with that group.
No, what's that called? City Park Alliance?
City Parks Alliance.
And what is that?
It's a nonprofit that manages. It's an interest group for I think both municipal and nonprofits that are working on
nationwide.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I haven't attended. We're hoping that we can go potentially next year. We're gonna propose something for that talks about the public-private partnership that we've been talking about today.
Oh, fantastic! And is that held? Is it traveling, or does it held in the same city every year, or what is that?
I think it does move around from location to location.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if you find out, I'd love to have them. That seem like that might be a good show.
Oh yeah.
So if you don't mind connecting me with them, maybe we can have them just explain to the general audience what that is and what they do and how they serve the community.
And that group, by the way, was the National Association for Park Foundations. I looked it up. I wanted to make sure they got credit. I just couldn't remember the name.
Let me type that in. National
Association for Park Foundations.
Academy for y'all giving me some homework here. For Parks Foundation. So both of those might make good shows as far as just sharing those resources. Yeah. So if y'all have any connections, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to mention, just to clarify, I was talking about how master plans can be a valuable tool, and the city we're working on RVA Inspire, or Richmond Inspire, which is our parks master plan that was inspired in some ways by the Friends of the James River Park System master plan. So I wanted to clarify that. I didn't want to make it like we didn't have a overarching master plan, but particularly with directors working with groups on a neighborhood basis, having even more localized plans for their parks as a tool. Anyway, I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, we're actually working on a little mini series. It might end up turning into a monthly show just on master planning because it's such a broad topic. So anybody out there that works with master plans as a consultant or anything, please hit me up on LinkedIn. We're kind of in the background putting that kind of stuff together.
It's a great time.
Yeah, it really is. Let's see. All right. So first of all, is there any message that y'all have for, I guess, the general Parks and Rec departments when it comes to nonprofits? Like, what makes a really good nonprofit, and what are some things you want to steer away from? Is there anything that y'all have learned over the years of the partnership, nonprofit Parks and Rec partnership that y'all have worked together? Is there anything, things you want to stay away from, or anything that you want to actually look for?
I'll start. I mean, I think just being committed to communicating regularly and often is really helpful, so that everybody understands what, as Josh mentioned earlier, nonprofits have to keep the lights on, whereas usually the public sector gets funded by tax dollars. So that that can lead to different strategies and different tactics in engaging the public. And it can also lead to, a need for communication sometimes, and a need for a nonprofit to hear back sooner from a city or local government than maybe the city might be intending on communicating. So just being committed to just steady communication and being committed to getting through the sort of messiness of what it is to try to support public spaces in the environment that we're in. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and right hand in glove with that is you got to keep your expects and checks. You gotta work hard to make sure everyone's expectations are the same, because I think that's where we've had any friction at all. It's been around the fact that I'm constantly reminding my board of directors that we don't control the pace of our work. That when we're investing in a project, it could be a while before the city moves up. We can approve our end of the funding, but it might take some other time for other priorities to align for something to get done. And so everybody just having an understanding and a level of patience that the mission is as long as that stays at front and stays focused on, and both sides understand what that mission is, I think you're going to be in a good place. But keeping your expectations aligned is and patience both ways. There are often times where I'm getting way out ahead on a project because I'm ready to go, much to, I'm sure, Giles's frustration, and vice versa. So it's one of those things that we just gotta communicate and stay on the same page with.
Now, anything with regards to, do y'all have internships that maybe college kids that are looking to get a little more exposure to what y'all doing? Is that something y'all offer?
We've talked about it before. We're a pretty streamlined organization. We don't operate out of an office. We don't spend really any money beyond, we've got 1.5 people for salary, and the rest goes into mission-driven stuff. And so I'm open to it possibly for next year. I think the toughest part is not having a home base. And, I know the city has some summer programming, but we don't do anything at Friends of right now. We may in the future.
Now, go ahead, Josh.
Oh, I was just going to say we've hosted interns in the past, and we don't have any positions right now available. So it's actually a challenge. We want to make sure that people have a positive intern experience, and we are stretched really thin. And you really need a good manager and mentor for most internships. So that's just our reality, speaking for at least the James River Park System division.
Yeah. So now we do have our Friday show is for the young professionals, and that's anywhere from high school and college kids that are kind of maybe haven't made their decision. But what's a message you would have for college kids that, they want to work in Parks and Rec, that kind of maybe have similarities to what y'all have when y'all were little? What kind of message, or when y'all were young, what message do y'all have for college kids of coming into this industry?
I think from my standpoint, what I love about working at the Parks Department is if you can start at an entry level, and you can actually climb the ranks and become a director. So there is absolutely a lot of opportunity, but I would also say, there are probably limited entry level jobs. So be flexible about where you're going, and just go someplace where you're going to develop a skill set that will make you marketable. So, for example, in Richmond, if somebody's interested in working for city parks and there's no opening, I would recommend looking at our counties right next to the city, at Henrico County and Chesterfield. So I'm sure it's similar in other localities, but to remain flexible, to understand that every position is going to give you the skills to leverage into a higher level position, and that ladder really does exist in the Parks and Rec industry. So to have flexibility and to look to developing your skill set.
Yeah. And there really are so many volunteer opportunities. Maybe you can speak, because I know y'all use a lot of volunteers. And so what age do y'all allow people to volunteer for some of the work that y'all do? Because that's that's a way to get exposure and experience. And some of this stuff is very resume ready. As soon as you're done, you can put that on your resume. Anything to say on that, Josh?
Yeah, I think depends on the type of volunteering you're doing. I would say the bulk of our volunteerism is driven around corporate engagement on the Friends side of the business. We do support a lot of the stuff with at the city with invasive species management and a few other things. So we're usually working with adults. But yeah, I do think there are tremendous opportunities, particularly in the James River Park system, to be a park host, to work on which are visitor center hosts and different things like that. That are great opportunities for folks to learn how to engage with the public and be around Parks and Rec. I think for finding a career in this field, I don't consider myself a Parks and Rec professional. We're not, Giles and I aren't in the same industry in a lot of ways. We're working on the same thing, but we're doing it from different angles. And I think the most important part is passion can be a nice crutch to help you get through the tough times, but it can't be the only thing you're trying to build a career on. So if passion is the easy part in a lot of ways. It's easy to find something you love, but it's hard to figure out how to maneuver that into career, into something that's going to be long-term fulfilling. And my advice to young people is to don't let passion be the only thing you're pursuing, because you can burn out if a job is rough and you took a job in something you love. Well, now you don't love that thing anymore, or you might not be tied as passionate about that thing. And so I would say focus on the type of work you want to do and not necessarily the thing you want to be, and that'll eventually come together.
Okay, so I think we're getting ready to lose Giles. I think she's got, I can't believe a Parks and Rec professional is busy and has a calendar that's
That's right.
Yeah.
I'll get to that. This is a fun question that we have at the end. Previously, someone, you answer a question, you leave a question, but the question is, if you were a kitchen appliance, what would it be and why? And then what question would you like to leave for the next guest on the show?
That's
I'll
hilarious.
let you go first, and you have to head out.
Okay, I would be a colander because I use it all the time, and it's such a simple thing. It's right there in front of me. I need it every day, and it's visually pleasing. I like it as an object. And my question is, what is the most fantastic experience in a park setting that you have had, in an urban park setting? Best experience you've ever had? I can't wait to hear what someone says.
Fantastic. Josh, go ahead.
I think I'm probably a sous vide machine. It's not right for every occasion, and it's kind of a hassle to make use of. But when it goes well, it goes really well. really specific.
What's a sous vide machine? I've never heard of that.
Sous vide machine. It's the thing that heats up the water. Essentially lets you cook in a pot of water to a very specific temperature.
Yes.
It circulates the water in a pot at 130 degrees, for example, if you're cooking a piece of meat that you're trying to get to an exact temperature. I don't know. It's not a perfect metaphor.
And what question would you like to leave for the next guest?
Well, I'm trying to think of the questions we had at our icebreaker a couple weeks ago, Giles. If you were, what kind of dog would you be? What kind of on-leash dog would you be if you were an on-leash dog?
What kind of on-leash dog? Well, thank you guys so much for attending today. It's been a great show. I really appreciate, y'all giving so much color into the nonprofit relationship, because I think that's so important. It's a great funding source and really a good partner when you're working with Parks and Rec. So appreciate y'all coming on today, and y'all have an awesome week.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Great
Craig.
to meet you.
Y'all take care. Bye. All right. So thank you so much, Josh and Giles for coming on today. I really thought that was interesting how these nonprofit relationships really work hand in glove with just providing the service. And there's so often that, if you're just walking up on a park, it's hard to see the management structure, the funding structure that goes into it. You just see a park that's put together, but there really are so many different ways that a park system can be funded, can be operated, that you can participate in it. And so this was just a good one for us to see a working nonprofit partnership with a city that's running the Parks and Rec department. So I encourage anyone out there that's running the Parks and Rec department to use those nonprofit relationships. And we've had actually several guests on the show that have just kind of mastered that. And it really just adds a lot to what you're doing, a lot more help, workforce. And as I think Josh pointed out, you're able to do things maybe a little bit quicker than I know a lot of times in city government, things just take a long time, and nonprofits can sometimes, get to the finish line much quicker because they just don't have all the red tape. All right. So next we have the Rec Room coming up in 25 minutes. This is our first episode with them. The rec room is Henry County, Georgia, and the Henry County, Georgia Parks and Rec Department entire leadership team is going to be on stage here in the next 25 minutes, where we really get to pull back the curtain and see how a Parks and Rec department makes its decisions, how they work together as a team. And we're going to do this every month, second Wednesday of every month. And I'm really excited about that, because this is, they have laid down the gauntlet and said they are the best run park system in America. And in many ways, I really think they have claim to that title. They have a super strong why, a super strong mission, a very talented leadership team. And I'm so happy to host them on the Daily Parks and Rec show, especially monthly. So we have like our own little brand, our own little show. So that's going to be coming up here shortly. Also would like to, tomorrow, Thursday, we have our Youth Sports Mastery with my host, Aaron Locks, to that show. He is just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to youth sports. So don't miss that. That's every Thursday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And then, of course, Friday, we have our YPN show, where it's all about the young professionals, Young Professionals Network, and the young professionals inside of Parks and Rec, all the way from high schools, high school kids coming in and volunteering for Parks and Rec, into the college kids doing internship programs, the teachers and mentors that are mentoring to them, and even the Parks and Rec departments that have internship programs. So, and there was a fifth group, which is if you're just new to Parks and Rec, your first 1 to 5 years, that all fits within that YPN bucket. That's a weekly show every Friday, 12 noon Eastern. So don't miss that. All right. So that's Craig LeBlanc signing off with the Daily Parks and Rec show. We'll see y'all here in a few minutes with the first ever Rec Room podcast. See you on a bit. Bye.
At DPRS Media Co., we don't just create content. We elevate community through storytelling. Now, we're proud to introduce the newest addition to the family. Welcome to Youth Sports Mastery, the podcast where champions are shaped, not just on the field, but in life. Hosted by the doorman himself, Craig LeBlanc, and National Academy of Athletics founder Aaron Locks. Youth Sports Mastery dives deep into how youth sports can empower kids, strengthen communities, and build leaders. From coaching culture to recreation strategy, and from player development to parent impact, every episode brings game-ready insight from the people making it happen. Youth Sports Mastery goes live every Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Only on the Daily Parks and Rec show, sponsored by National Academy of Athletics and powered by DPRS Media Co. This is where purpose meets play.